Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh to some, and peace out to the rest of you. What up, though? The blackest hearted, blackest minded, blackest man on social media, sign of black and shining again, asking you to hit the share button because the message is more important than the messenger. So here's the deal, y'all. We talk to y'all a bit about these double standards and the way this works. Now, I am all in favor of being fair, as I've said before, but there are times when double standards are such for a reason. Double standards have no place between races, and they have every place in between genders, and I'll tell you what the reasons are. First reason is real simple. One thing about double standards is that, races are composed of so many unvarying individuals. So many varying individuals, that there are more differences within each race than there are between any two races. The thing that races have in common is their variation. The thing that genders have in common is their species. But each gender is defined as not being the other. So you see, where I live and work, there's a strange phenomenon, curious phenomenon. A lot of people don't like it. When a woman's divorced, for her to remarry, somebody can ask her, well, listen, why are y'all divorced? When a man is divorced and he wants to remarry, they don't ask that question. The assumption is that it's not his fault, and that's not always a correct assumption to make, but I'm going to tell you why I have no problem with it. You see, a man has to be the one that pays the dowry. That means either having a lot of money that others don't have, or going into debt in order to get the dowry to pay to the lady. Also, the gifts that the family is going to want, which are not Islamically binding but are customarily imposed. And then there is the impressing that he has to do of the men in her family. So I'm just going to call it what it is. It's a fair double standard. See, when a man has to go through all of this, it's not in his interest. It's not something he wants to do, to just collect them and throw them away. Why would a man want to do this? He would not. So a man doesn't have an interest in marrying someone just to throw her away, throw her back. She has to do something disrespectful in many cases. And when I listen to these men, that's exactly what the hell they say. No, I don't go asking the women. You don't want me to have access to ask these women, ladies. So I don't want to hear your mouths about it. When these men marry, it is imposed upon them that they make it worth it to keep her. That's it. There's more. See, I realize that this is one-sided, but I guess it has to be. There's something else at play here too. The other thing that's at play here, another issue, is that I understand why it is that there are 72 virgins promised to the martyrs who make it to paradise. Not to everyone, but I understand also why it is that there are virgin maidens of paradise promised to the men who make it, although the number may not be 72 for all. I understand why there is such. I understand why carnal pleasures having to do with the insides of women are promised to the men in paradise. Why would Allah do this and not say something similar to the women? It's very simple. Ladies, you have similar needs. You have libidos. But for either a good or a bad reason, you're going to be very choosy. And oftentimes, even when you are married, you are going to be, you're going to insist on certain things being made available to you. Things that are very rare. You're going to want rare things in abundance. And if you give in to that wish, you're going to turn around and deny the husband his right. When that happens, you're going to oppress that man. Simply put, one thing that many women are not going to do, especially with the men most deserving of this, is to prioritize his libido even in a marriage. So I perfectly understand why Allah promised this to us and did not make the same promise to you. Although paradise will be paradise, I don't have a problem anymore. I don't even have a question, I should say. Used to be I had a question, but I didn't have a problem because I trusted Allah. But now I don't even have a question as to why he didn't promise this to you. What were you going to do? Admit to us how important this is to you in the first place? Even the women that ask this question as if to challenge, we're not asking this question so as to ask Allah for this. They were asking this question so as to challenge men only. My question to them would be, is this even something that you would admit is a strong incentive for you to behave in such a way as to go to paradise? Because the way that women act towards the normal, run-of-the-mill men that are actually alive and available today, the way these women act is as if men have an intrinsically negative value. Would you expect me to reward someone with anything they have acted as though is unimportant to them and trifling, of no consequence and of no value? That is the last thing you would ever do. You wouldn't do this if your life depended on it. And so that's why I'm sitting up and I'm looking like, well, I mean, you can say it's your nature and that's how it created you. So what? You wouldn't do this even with a husband in many cases. Not all of you would, but you wouldn't. And the reason I know this is because it has been the most seriously practicing Muslim women I have married that have taken this seriously and that have actually done right by me in that regard. Now, the Western Muslim I married would never do this. Absolutely not. Going back on a word, and I'm talking about Western ladies in general, including the Western Muslims, going back on their words, going back on promises. And this is something that is actually universally understood. I hate to say this, but this is universally understood about women. I don't like to talk this way, but the fact remains that yes, there are even where I live, men who will say, when you promise, they will say, are you making a man's promise or are you making a woman's promise? And the idea is not that women make a promise and then they just intentionally go back on it. Some would say it's intentional. Others say it's unintentional, that women forget. But they debate about that. This is not unanimously accepted that women are just by nature promise makers and promise breakers. Or intentionally such. That's not unanimously accepted. But again, the question only remains, is it intentional or is it unintentional? And my answer to you would be, it probably depends on the lady. But they're going to make and then break promises. And I'm going to sit up and say to you that this is why it is that even Allah from above the seven heavens has said to men who worship him first, and him alone exclusively, and who obey him above all obedience to others, above obedience to any of the creation, that should you do so, and then you die in his cause or for his cause, you get 72 virgins. And if you were simply obedient and worshipful, but you don't pass away in his cause, you still get a certain number of maidens of paradise that are unlike any of the women here on earth. And that the women here on earth who live in worship and obedience to him will then be made into something better than these maidens of paradise. Because the maidens of paradise never lived outside of paradise, never had to deal with hardship, whereas the ladies from our species who go through this world and still make it to paradise actually went through something, so they will then be made better into something with which the maidens of paradise cannot compete. That's fair. He has made it completely fair. You can argue about how unfair men are. I could tell you that when it comes to what goes on between the genders, it is certainly women that are more unfair. And I'm gonna tell you one more reason why these double standards are not only fair but necessary. There's one other thing you will see. Look at what you are looking for in women, gentlemen. You're easy to please. You don't make things difficult. That's good. Now, look at what it is that these ladies want from you. They want you to be richer, taller, older. They want all of these things from you, and that's okay. Of all these things that these ladies want from you, they want you to be stronger. Now, they want all of these things. You must now ask yourself, if they want all of these things, then why is it that they wear heels to be taller, lift weights in the gym to become stronger, compete with you in the job market to get as much or more money as you? Why do they compete to become exactly out of your league when they still want someone? They work to put themselves into exactly the position into which the Wicked Witch of the West has placed herself. Sad, lonely, with a high body count, and unable to start a family, to the point that some of them are now looking at their lives in their late 20s and falling from 22nd story windows, ending it all, as we've just seen. Wanting to know why they can't have what they want after they've done the one thing that could disqualify them from what it is they want from a man. Get a high body count. The one thing the one thing for which we would disqualify them. And some ladies say, well, you'll screw as many as will open their legs to you. Even if that is the case, and a lot of men actually aren't that easily capable of going out and just sleeping with a bunch of strangers, but even if that were the case, the majority of men are never going to be able to rack up the same body counts. Absolutely not. It's a few men with these abnormally high body counts, because it's these few men between whom the rest of the women have individually picked up triple-digit body counts. And that is the one thing they could do to completely just disqualify themselves. Men will settle for a 7 that hasn't racked up a body count, or a 7 who they don't know has racked up a body count, before they'll get with a 9 that they know everybody done had a turn at. And here you all are upset because men have at least a standard. And a lot of guys now are sitting up letting women rack up high body counts and still wifing them up because they've been trained and taught to do so. But the ones that won't do that, won't settle for that, are enough to where someone in her late 20s, I think, who's been on Instagram, and I read Pornhub, she was on there too. Booty models, racking up body counts sometimes on on OnlyFans before they cut this stuff off. They still can't get someone. Or they can't get who they want, because who they want are exactly the guys that would not accept this from them, that would not accept them as they are. One reason some women they hide their body counts isn't just so they can get the guy, it's so that they can get themselves to keep that man. Because many of them feel like, well, if I was honest about him and I told him, he might still stay, and then I'd really lose all respect for him. Again, all the difficulty is around them, even unnecessarily. Keep these double standards. Don't lose them, gentlemen. As a matter of fact, if you're a man that does not have some of these double standards, then you need to start bringing them into your lives. And the reason I say that is because you actually really could not force a woman to not hold a high body count against you if you have a high body count. If a woman's going to hold that against you, you could not stop her from holding it against you. She could say to you, no, you done screwed too many other women. I don't want you no more. The thing is, we already know they don't do that. We know you can take a good church woman and offer her a choice between two guys that are generally identical, except that one done got around the block more so than the other one. And she gonna take the one with more experience in many cases. Unless the idea nauseates her to the point he can't wash his Johnson up enough times, she's gonna prefer the experience. And I've had more than one Muslima tell me, well, we don't want husbands that are sexually incompetent in bed. What it is you don't want to actually, and this is a Muslima that told me this recently, and another one told me this decades ago, actually. And what I'm saying to you is that in actuality, they just don't want to have to really communicate. They want someone that knows what they want without having to say it. If you read the description of the maidens of paradise in Islam, you'll understand exactly why the hell it is that they were promised to those who make it there in the first place. And why there's not a corollary or male analogy to that promise made to the women. If there was, they wouldn't do a doggone thing to earn it. And if Allah sat up and revealed that there was something like this waiting for them in paradise in the first feather mucking place, I kid you not, just to spite many of us, many of the women would turn around and act contrary, just to show what value we don't have to them, especially below the waist. But then when you start withdrawing all of it, the commitment, the resources, and that Johnson, some of them turn around and start talking about how lonely they are and what they don't get and jump off a 22nd story window. I think you understand my point now. Thank you for listening. Black heart, black mind, blackout, and black heterosexual non-select male power just because they don't like it, and black patriarchy until extinction or judgment day.